Hello everyone, it's John Pollock, John Ramdeen, and Robin Black. This is our number 4 story of 2016, and it's an overarching theme of retirements from the past year. We just saw the retirement of Uriah Faber, and as well this year, we saw Miesha Tate call it a career, Dan Henderson as well, and we know going into 2017, Tito Ortiz has announced that his next fight will be his last. But of those three, let's start with Uriah Faber.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sad time when you think of some of the legends of mixed martial arts calling it a day, and Uriah Faber was one of those guys that carried the WEC on his shoulders. There was competition for the UFC. I know a lot of the casual fans out there, when it came to consuming mixed martial arts, UFC was the brand. But for a lot of fight fans out there that wanted to see something different, they wanted to see the speedier, the faster, the more skilled guys, they tuned into the WEC to see Donald Cerrone and Carlos Condit and Anthony Pettis and Jose Aldo. But at the top of the heap, and I know Jose Aldo defeated Uriah Faber, people tuned into Uriah Faber because of everything he did inside of the cage. He was one of these guys that was reckless. He was always in tip-top form. He was always exciting. When it came to bonuses, you were almost guaranteed that Uriah Faber would get a bonus every time he stepped inside of the cage. And he didn't back down from the top competition. And then on top of that, he built Team Alpha Male. We saw TJ Dillashaw became a champion. Chad Mendes challenged for a title. Joseph Benavidez challenged for a title. So that
Garbrandt next weekend.
Garbrandt challenging for a title. So, I mean, just the things that Uriah Faber has been able to do in mixed martial arts has been remarkable. And clearly, a legacy has been laid, and everybody will remember the California Kid for years and years.
When we talk about the retirements of this year, there's a lot more positivity than is often the case.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes people hang on too long, or they fight because they need the money, or
Let's look no further than the Bernard Hopkins example from...
Holy cow, did you see that knockout?
I mean, that's tough because this is not an industry where you typically get the Sacramento send-off that a Uriah Faber got, where he goes out with a win, the crowd is cheering. It's usually a much smaller audience. It's a guy that is a fraction of what he once was.
51 years old, getting knocked out of a ring.
And then and we do look at it the other side, the MMA side. Dan Henderson fighting for a title right down to that last round, going for it. That's how you go out. Now, obviously, if you won it, that would be the step up. But to lose a very close decision and then be able to go out with your head held super high, Dan Henderson. Yeah,
I thought that was the greatest outcome because it kept the middleweight division moving. It was a great fight. Dan Henderson can go to his grave thinking he won that fight, and you could make that argument if you.
I'm sure a lot of people are telling Dan Henderson, look at your face and look at his face. He's smashed to shit. You're not. You won that fight.
That isn't how fighting is scored.
That.
No. But if you're gonna take the barroom approach, like Dan, you know,
exactly.
So that part for sure. And then Miesha, even, you know, she goes out on 2 losses, but she won the UFC title. Yeah. That was her dream.
And
that was
Strikeforce title.
Yeah. So that was her goal. That's what she set out to do, and she achieved that. And so, you know, that's beautiful too. I have a weird feeling she may come back because to achieve it and then be sort of unsure of what to do, unsure how to be motivated, unsure what the new goals are, and then go, I'm just not feeling it, and retire, that can change in 3 months, 4 months, where suddenly you're like, why am I retired? I love this. I'm driven to do it again. You know, that the win and then the exhale that she had, she just didn't know how to re-inhale, and she may be back.
And with Miesha Tate as well, I mean, Dana White revealed here to us that she was going to be moving over to be an analyst on Fox, and you wonder when she's getting prepared for these broadcasts. We've seen how many current level champions, just what they get out of that kind of analysis. And if Miesha Tate almost rediscovers that love for mixed martial arts, realizing I'm still in my early 30s, I could definitely still do this. I'm with Robin. Of those 3, if I had to look at one of them to possibly come back, it's probably Miesha Tate because I don't see Uriah Faber or Dan Henderson fighting again. I could be wrong on all 3 cases.
Dan Henderson, because of the way the last fight played out, and again, I'm sure all of his supporters are telling him that he won that fight. You could see how if the UFC was to offer him a rematch with the third fight with Michael Bisping, it would be attractive to Dan Henderson. The one I'm curious about is Uriah Faber, because Robin and I were talking about the fact that Faber was doing this when there was no money to be made. There was no 135 or 145 pound fighters fighting in the UFC. There was no way you're going to make millions and millions of dollars. He was doing it for the love of combat. He was the smaller guy. There was a story about him in some grappling competition, and he was talking to Frank Trigg, because you and I are the same size. He's like, I'm 200 pounds. You are not the same size.
It is mine,
as
he
it
is.
is mine.
I know, I love
he
it.
is. So that's the type of guy that Uriah Faber is. So you take him away from this competition, and yes, he's probably going to be at the gym seeing the next crop of talent. But I wouldn't be surprised if he said, you know what, I'm getting back in there.
A fight or something. A year later, it's like, I still got abs, I can do it. And then Tito. Tito's had a great career. And people who have been absorbing and consuming and loving martial arts for a long time will always have a love for Tito Ortiz. The modern Tito is not appreciated the way that I think he deserves to be. I'll tell you one thing, win or lose, Chael will give the night over to Tito. And that's going to be an exciting night. And Tito Ortiz has had a great career, and we should thank him for those great fights.
The thing about Tito Ortiz, and we all know this, is that Tito Ortiz really set the bar. It was the perfect combination of pro wrestling and combat, and he really elevated the interest in mixed martial arts and everything. You know, you look at his fights with Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture and all the drama, and the Ken Shamrock fights. Tito Ortiz was instrumental in the growth of mixed martial arts. It wouldn't be as big as it is today if it wasn't for Tito Ortiz.
All of these four, and there are others. You know, Kyle Noak was a pioneer in Australia. There's a number of fighters. You know, we don't do a great job in this particular sport of kind of honoring the pioneers. In baseball or football or hockey, you hear them talking about the Gordie Howes and the whoever Gordie Howe is in those other sports. But in fighting, we don't always do that much. And that's something, if we're making New Year's resolutions, let's try that one on.
All right, well, those retirements, that was story number 4 for 2016.